Game Freak removed a lot of moves from the game, like Z moves, max moves, signature moves of Dexited Pokémon, but most of all, underwhelming moves that saw little to no use that no one would really care about if left behind. With Legend ZA bringing back and reworking some of these moves, it opens up the possibility for other moves to be given that same treatment in Champions. So in this video, I thought it would be fun to try and fix some of the worst Dexited Pokémon moves. I got a lot of these ideas from the comments on this community post I made recently, mixing and matching ideas from multiple different comments since I got a lot more responses than I thought I would get, so huge thanks to everyone who contributed. I included 42 moves in the original post and will be going over 10 of them that I had the best ideas for. First up is Sky Uppercut. This is a physical fighting type move with the property that it can hit Pokemon on the semi-invulnerable turn of Fly, Bounce, and Sky Drop. However, all of those moves are flying type, so they'll typically be used by a flying type, a type that resists fighting, so why would you use Sky Uppercut? As just a regular fighting move, it's fine, but mostly just outclassed by Close Combat, which has higher power and higher accuracy, although it does have that defensive drop drawback. Out of the Pokemon that previously got this move, the only one that might want to use it is Gliscor, since it doesn't get Close Combat, but it does get Brick Break, which is comparable due to its higher accuracy but lower power and better secondary effect. There's a very obvious change that many of you commented on the community post that I also had the idea for before I even made the post, which is to make it deal super effective damage on flying types, aka fighting type freeze dry. This would definitely give it a good use, especially against mons like Corviknight that are now 4 times weak to Sky Uppercut since its other type is weak to fighting. I think we can keep its 85 power and 90% accuracy since its distribution is pretty limited, but it might get out of hand on Mega Lucario and Mega Lopunny. Next up is Refresh. This move heals the user of its burn, poison, or paralysis status condition. It cannot heal freeze or sleep since those status conditions restrict movement, and even when called by Sleep Talk, it still does not heal sleep. This move did have a niche before it was removed, which was on mons that couldn't hold a Lumberry, like any Mega Evolution, any Pokemon that wanted to use a Z move, and any of Arceus's alternate forms. Outside of Mega and Z move formats, where Pokemon are more free to hold an item, they would probably rather just use the Lumberry instead of spending the move slot, so I feel that it needs a buff. I suggest that Refresh heals the user of all volatile and non-volatile status conditions and can be selected through effects that restrict movement, like the volatile status conditions Taunt, Encore, and Disable, and the non-volatile status conditions Paralysis, Freeze, and Sleep. This widens its use cases, but considering that most of these conditions either go away after a few turns or go away upon switching, Refresh would only allow a Pokemon to limit that status condition to 1 turn at the cost of a turn and a move slot, so I think it would be quite balanced. Next up is Grudge. This is a ghost type status move that makes it so that if the user faints as the result of a damaging move, that damaging move will lose all of its PP. In its current state, it's basically just worse Destiny Bond, as Destiny Bond knocks out the Pokemon instead of just reducing PP, so it absolutely needs a rework. I suggest that it instead reduces the PP of all the attacker's moves down to 1 each. I feel like if we made it so that it reduces all the moves' PP down to 0, it could make for some pretty broken scenarios since it would instantly force your opponent to struggle. Unlike Destiny Bond that just knocks out the Pokemon, this would prolong the Pokemon's suffering and basically make them dead weight that can't do anything for a few turns. If they have 1 PP on each move, I think it could be a lot more balanced and useful since you could protect stall for 2 of those turns to try and force them to eventually struggle. Some notable users of Grudge include Shedinja, Dusclops, Weezing, Dragapult, and Gengar, and some Gen 9 mons that it would be good on are Fluttermane and Iron Valiant, as their non-Paradox forms get the move. They both have high speed and can increase their speed with a booster energy, giving them a good chance to get Grudge off. Next up is Bestow. This move passes the user's item to the target, but fails if the target already has an item. In its current state, Bestow is completely outclassed by Trick, Switcheroo, and Knockoff if you want a move that messes with an opponent's item. So, I suggest that Bestow replaces your target's item with the user's item, leaving the user itemless. This makes it more of a side grade to those moves, and I could see some instances where Bestow would be better. Unlike Trick, Switcheroo, and Knockoff, Bestow has perfect accuracy and bypasses both Protect and Substitute. So for example, an Ursaluna or Gliscor couldn't safely protect to get their status conditions, as you could bestow them something before their orbs go off. A good item to bestow to them would be a ring target to get rid of their immunities. Sometimes you don't want your opponent's item, or at least you wouldn't want to take the risk, like if it's an orb from the last example, or a choice item or assault vest that restricts move use. It could have use on an unburdened mon, if any unburdened mons got this move, as you could bestow a negative item like a flame orb and then have your speed doubled. It still leaves the user with no item, and you'd probably want it to be a negative item, so you really have to commit to the strategy if you want to make it work. Next up is Constrict. This is the weakest damaging move with a set base power in the game at 10, and it also has a whopping 10% chance to lower speed by 1 stage. I understand that some moves are meant to be weak, since their primary function is to be used by low-leveled Pokemon in the early game of a playthrough, so it might seem pointless to try and rework it, but even as an early game move, Constrict is completely pathetic, and you'd genuinely rather use Tackle or even Struggle. My idea is a complete rework, which is to turn it into a spread status move that lowers the target's speed by 1 stage on hit, and then continues to lower their speed by 1 stage for every turn they stay on the battlefield. It would not trap the Pokemon, and the effect would go away upon switching like Salt Cure. This would make it a neat form of speed control in doubles, and I think this would keep it balanced enough that it would be a side grade to things like Tailwind, Cotton Spore, and Icy Wind. Tailwind doubles the speed of the user's side, but it has a turn limit. Icy Wind deals damage but can miss and only lowers speed by 1 stage, and Cotton Spore lowers speed by 2 stages, but it's a powder move and doesn't deal any damage. Next up is Steamroller. This is a 65 base power physical bug move with a 30% chance to flinch. It's at that awkward point where it's not really an early game move, since Scolipede learns it at level 39, but it's also not really a competitively viable move since it only has 65 base power without a good enough secondary effect to be worth it. So, I would add a condition to where it increases in power depending on what entry hazards are set on the opposing side. If you're rolling over your opponent with the full weight of your body, they'll be rolled onto the spikes or rocks that are set up. Every layer of regular spikes would add 20 power to Steamroller, so 85 at 1 layer, 105 at 2, and 125 at 3. Stealth Rock would be a flat plus 40 power, and Toxic Spikes wouldn't deal any extra damage, but rather it poisons the target if they aren't already poisoned upon switch-in. Any Flying type, Levitator, or Heavy Duty Boots holder that's normally immune to the poisoning will get poisoned after getting hit with Steamroller. Same with Sticky Web, those that are normally immune to those hazards would have their speed lowered after a use of Steamroller. Next up is Spotlight. This is a normal type status move that causes the target to become the center of attention, redirecting attacks from the target's opponents into it, regardless of other redirection effects like Follow Me. This was one of the lowest ranked moves in my doubles move ranking video because its use cases are so specific and don't have very high payoff. It allows you to bypass an opposing Follow Me, but you have to hard read your opponent and give up one of your Pokemon's turns. Some of you discussed in the comments of that video that it could also be used on your ally to force your opponent to target them, which could be good if your ally uses Destiny Bond and wants to get knocked out, but overall, it's kind of a stretch to call this move useful. I would make it so that it does force your opponent to target their ally, but it can only be used the first turn the Pokemon is sent in battle, like Fake Out, to balance it out. If you know your opponent has Spotlight, it can create mind games that force your opponent into being passive, since they wouldn't want to risk attacking and hitting their own ally, giving it a similar result to Fake Out in allowing your ally to have a safer first turn. If the Pokemon is fast enough, it could be used before Fake Out since it has the same +3 priority, so it would make your opponent fake out their own ally. Next up is Rototiller. This move increases the attack and special attack of all grounded Grass-type Pokemon by 1 stage each. The limitation of only working on Grass types, the fact that it can affect your opponent, and only granting +1 to attack and special attack makes this move completely not worth using. I have a simple and fitting buff idea, which is to bump up the stat increase to +2 attack and special attack in grassy terrain. Growth is a very similar move that increases attack and special attack by 1 stage normally, which gets boosted to 2 stages in harsh sunlight, so I feel that a similar effect could be applied to grassy terrain with Rototiller. This could finally be something to give Tapu Bulu a good use, since it could increase its own stats and increase the stats of its grass-type ally, which does force you to double up on grass types, but in a format with Terra, that won't be much of an issue. You just need to make sure that your opponent doesn't have any grass types, because they would get boosted too. To balance it out, we could make it so that the stat boost from Rototiller would go away once the terrain runs out or is overridden, because +2 attack and special attack to yourself and ally without any drawback is pretty insane. Next up is Dual Chomp. This is a 40 base power physical dragon move that hits twice. It's in a very similar spot as Steamroller, where it's not really an early game playthrough move, but also not really a competitively viable move. Hitting multiple times can be nice to break through focus sashes and substitutes, but 40 base power on each hit and 90% accuracy with no other effect just isn't cutting it. I feel like if we increase the power or accuracy, it would just be turning it into Dragon Darts, which is a good move, but I'd rather keep it unique. So I'd instead add a secondary effect of a high critical hit ratio on each hit. When combined with Focus Energy, Haxorus would be able to channel its inner Urshifu by hitting multiple times and critting on each individual hit. There's also Dragon Cheer and doubles to make this move a guaranteed crit, with Garchomp, Kommo-o, and Guzzlord being the only other physical attacking dragon types to learn the move. Physical attacking dragon types really need better options, and I feel that this is a nice and balanced rework since you might still want to use Scale Shot for its speed increasing effect or Dragon Claw for its higher accuracy. Last up is Wring Out. This is a special attacking normal move that varies in power from 1 to 120 based on what % HP the target has remaining. Specifically, it uses this formula, and if you're familiar with Regigigas' signature move Crush Grip, it's the exact same, just special. This move isn't great because of its lack of consistency, the consistency of other special normal moves like Hyper Voice, and the fact that one normal type line gets it, Licky Licky. I saw a very creative rework appear multiple times in the comments of the community post, which was to turn it into a status move that removes the opponent's water typing as if you're wringing out a towel. We have the move Soak that changes a Pokemon to pure water by soaking them in water, so a move that does the opposite by wringing them out could make sense. Serperior and Necrozma are probably the best users of this move, and I could see it having use against Kyogre or Urshifu Rapid Strike to shut down their water moves, or Dondozo and Ogerpon Wellspring that use water more defensively. It would be really good on a Prankstermon, but unfortunately no Prankstermons get this move. Based on the mons that get Wring Out, it seems having tentacles or a serpentine body is a requirement, and I think Grimmsnarl is the only Prankstermon that it would make sense on, with it being shown to unravel its arm hairs on the animation of some of its moves. And that's how I would fix some of the worst Dexited Pokémon moves. Let me know what you think of the changes I made, and thanks again to everyone who dropped suggestions on the community post. Anyway, if you want to support me and my channel, just leave a nice comment since I do read all comments. You can also become a member for 99 US cents a month to get a badge next to your name and early video access like all of these lovely people. If you want bonus content, check out my second channel, Extra Bell, where I post videos I've scrapped from the main channel, as well as more casual, unscripted videos. Likes are also one of the ways that YouTube determines if a video should be passed around to more people, so if you feel that this video deserves to be, I would appreciate it. Thanks for watching.